Hello and welcome to Gary Gomes Astrology and How It Affects Your Life. My name is Gary Gomes. You can reach me at 508-525-0001. I have been a Vedic astrologer. Let me show you what I look like. I've been a Vedic astrologer for 30 plus years. And this show essentially goes into how the planets are affecting you individually, how the planets are affecting the world overall, and also how the planets are affecting economic conditions and even elections. Uh, I've been in astrology for 30 plus years, as I said before. I'm also a Swami of the Temple of Kriya Yoga, and I'm also a Reiki master. I've also read tarot cards for 30 plus years. I've also done Reiki for nearly as long, maybe around 27 years, I think, Reiki, 27, 26 years. And I'm also I'm a Reiki master, but again, that's, you see, it's not boasting, I'm just giving you my resume. And finally, I'm a swell guy and I have a master's in business administration, uh, a doctorate in education, a BA in sociology. It was originally sociology, journalistic studies, and I just uh, changes in the department made it difficult for me to pursue journalism. And so there was a change when I was in school towards investigative journalism as opposed to reporting. And I didn't like the move, and um, because I thought, and I proved right, that essentially investigative journalism would turn into um, it would make news more entertainment driven than and and drama driven than factual. And I think, at least in my humble opinion, time has proved me correct. And that's why you'll often hear me not really criticizing, just encouraging people to take everything, and I mean literally everything they hear with a pinch of salt. So I respect journalists. They do a fantastic job. It's just um, there's a line that has to be drawn somewhere in terms of um, whether or not you can trust everything uh, this being said to you, because it's a product, okay? And there's nothing inherently wrong with products, but there's nothing inherently honest about them either. So you have to be a little bit careful about that. I've served as the president of the Council of Vedic Astrology. I've also served as an instructor at Kepler College, American College of Vedic Astrology, and also at Dyra Academy with my for my good friend Roland Duluth in the Netherlands. Uh, so, and I've also written on Vedic astrology, in the process of completing a book on Vedic astrology, first in a series. That's the plan. I'm also planning on opening a school, and also planning on increasing my YouTube presence once I get into a more permanent facility and start building up um, more of a permanent studio versus this one, which is sort of like, it's fun, but it's not really the standard I want to bring it to. The other thing I'd like to ask you to do is, as viewers, is to share this video with your friends, with people who you think would be interested in it, people interested in astrology, or who just want to see a good-looking guy talk for about an hour, and or and a modest guy, and see how you like it. There are plans to include or incorporate what I would call a music channel, and that may be very free form. It may be covering music that you may not have heard of. It may be covering certain musical techniques or instruments that I've run across. It's going to be pretty open-ended. And finally, again, please subscribe. I'm trying to get subscriptions up to the monetization point. And I can only do that with your help. Okay, so please subscribe if you're interested in what I do. And even if you're not interested in what I do, please subscribe. Because essentially, by having more people talking about Vedic astrology online in a manner which is easy to understand for folks, I think we'll get more people interested in what I consider one of the greatest astrological traditions in the world. That's just my humble opinion. It's very Vedic astrology is very, and it's funny, you wouldn't think so just because it comes from India and that's the realm of metaphysics. But Vedic astrology is very concrete. So essentially, it derives from a philosophy called Sankhya, which is about the descent of spirit into matter. So it fits into the basic concept of karma. That is, we're bringing forward karmas from previous lifetimes and manifesting them in this lifetime. Even if you don't believe in reincarnation, you can say, well, God's putting us in Earth at this particular time in order to manifest what that spirit needs to manifest. So there's nothing inherently contradictory about not believing in reincarnation and accepting astrology. You just have to, and for those of you who don't want to have a deity, you can say, well, it's just this situation you've been put into, your spirit's been put into this particular form at this particular time to experience these particular things. And you do have some control over it. Mastery of the large. I'm going to go off into a slight side talk just for a couple of minutes, just to give you my orientation. Even before I became interested in spirituality or Hinduism. I long felt that the bodies that we're in are containers. They're not, they're certainly real, and you can certainly experience real pain and real happiness and real pleasure and real sadness from them, right? But I think when you get down to things at, let's say, a really, really tiny level, or even a more grandiose level, we're part of a larger existence. We're part of a larger universe, and nothing brings that out quite to me more like going out in the summertime and looking up at the sky and just looking at the vast multitude of space out there and saying, wow, we're really tiny. We're, this is not, so I'm this human being, I'm this individual, and I'm a part, but I'm being exposed to this much larger area. But the fact that I can conceive of this much larger area is thanks to my sense organs, but also it's thanks to the part. It belongs to the part that I'm actually a part of it. I'm not separate from it. So this body, these things, these eyes we have, this appearance we have, my hair which needs to be cut. They're not really, number one, they're transient. They don't last forever. And number two, the fact that we're even looking at something which is not going to last forever, sort of like builds in the entire idea that the universe is a transient place. and we're part of that transient place. We're part of that churning of immortality. So it isn't that we choose to be separate from the rest of the world. It's a conscious or an unconscious choice. So, and the fact that we are essentially, at least to me, is an illusion. So we're essentially connected to everything. And like I said, this came before I was exposed to the idea of spiritual traditions, which essentially preach the same thing, which essentially said the same thing. And so I think that one of the things it helps to look at is we're observing and participating in a pattern of time which is transient, which is passing. And we're waiting for episodes in which things are more pleasant or things are less pleasant so we can learn how to adapt, right? So I think when you get right down to it, we're looking at history, or we're experiencing history through certain filters, through certain cultural perceptions, no matter which culture we belong to. And that gives a certain perspective or a certain balance to the idea that everything is so horrible and and oh my God, isn't it awful? I think it helps us to form a sense of detachment and actually to weather storms more carefully, more successfully. So, and also more control over, number one, our reactions. But if we can control our reactions, we control our lives. So I had wanted to talk about the French elections just briefly today. And I'm going to talk a bit more about Bitcoin. Then I'm going to look at the world map, and I'm going to look at your astrological maps for the certain signs. Okay, so let me pull this up and share it. And since this screen doesn't always share right away, I hope people didn't find that, that digression too boring. But yeah, we're all a part of everything. All right, so this is the chart of, let's go to France first of all. I'm going to close this down, this chart down, because these usually don't work at first go. And that's former, the previous president, the current president, I'm sorry, Emmanuel Macron of France. And that wasn't a Freudian slip. I was just a mistake. Basically, he has some pretty interesting patterns in his chart. He's got Saturn in the rules the first house, Lord of the first house, and in the eighth. So he's considered to be a tough person to beat. He's got Mars debilitated in the seventh house, which is interesting. And I'll show you why that's interesting in a second. And Venus in the 11th, which essentially is really a very strong combination for victory. Now, his chart, I think, is really fascinating because he's in a Rahu Venus K2 subperiod. You see over here, it's very tough to see, but you can see that. And let's look at his Dastamsha chart. His Dastamsha chart is down here. I'll make it bigger. And just see if I can see that. Okay, this is the D1 chart. 10. No, I can't get the D10. I'm so sorry. See now. Mars sign charts, Mars and Ram show. All divisions. There you go. So the D10 is a chart of career. Okay. So he's got some problems in the chart. And essentially, his biggest problem is that Saturn is aspecting his moon by natural transit in the descent chart. Now, again, these charts, these harmonic charts down here, tend to change a lot. So Saturn may not actually be aspecting that first house in the chart. He's also got Saturn in the first house, so he's tough to knock out. He's actually a very tough person to knock out a lot. But he actually rose to fame during a Rahu Mahadasha, Rahu Venus. And he's in a Rahu Venus, Rahu subperiod right now, Jupiter subperiod, April 24th. So that's tomorrow. That's the election day. And so let's go over to Francis' chart. So, and you'll see some of the combinations. Francis chart. France is, okay, so France has a Pisces rising sign. Mars is in the third house, pretty strong. Venus is in the seventh house, not strong at all. Although Mercury's there, it cancels the debilitation of Venus being in the seventh house. So it generally has good relationships with its allies, but it's a little bit dissatisfied, and a little bit contemptuous of its allies, to be honest. And it also has Jupiter in Libra. So to a certain extent, that Jupiter in Libra is making it a little bit irritated or unwise now. Now, France is in a K2 subperiod. It's in a Rahu K2 subperiod. So that's essentially usually it's in a Venus Mahadasha. So its Mahadasha isn't good. Venus is strong, but it's also weak with this combination. And also Venus K2 indicates some kind of an upset or some kind of a change in the Dasapta chart. So let's look at Marine Le Pen's chart. And Marine's a far-right candidate. She's made a lot of efforts to appear more towards the middle in the chart and more towards the middle of, and she's in the Rahu Mahadasha right now too. Rahu Mercury, Jupiter subperiod. So where's Jupiter in her chart? Jupiter's in the sixth house, so she's very competitive right now. She has some extent of popularity. Jupiter is passing over natal Rahu in her chart. Jupiter is passing over natal Ketu in Macron's chart. This chart tends to favor, this election tends to favor, it favors Mr. Macron from the standpoint of the fact that he's tough to get out of office. He's very, very tough to get out of office. And Marine is considered to be not very wise. It's interesting they both have debilitated Mars in this sign. But Marine is showing signs. Her Mercury is stronger than Mr. Macron's. Well, no, not quite. Mr. Macron's Mercury is stronger than hers is. And she's got the politician combination, so she's a bit of a liar. Mr. Macron has what are called lying combinations in the chart. Almost every politician has them. But it's interesting because Jupiter, which is the great benefic, which essentially opens up things for people, is now in Pisces. And that will help Maureen a little bit more than it will help Emmanuel. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that she'll win. I went a little bit overboard last time. I thought she'd actually win, but we get our clue from France's chart. And France, like the United States, if you look at the electoral map for Trump, let's say in the United States, Trump carried a lot of, I'm going to close this out, a lot of the country's districts. Okay, so a lot of the rural areas. And Mr. Biden carried a lot of the city areas, where the population centers are. So that's an advantage. But I think the thing that Maureen has working in her favor is that the French are disinterested over here. They're unhappy over here. They're dissatisfied here. So that gives her a better chance of winning than in 2017. That doesn't mean she will, but it's possible you'll see a new prime minister election tomorrow. That's what the odds say. I don't know if that's going to happen. So Paris tends to be more. Paris is the largest population center in France, obviously, and Ms. Le Pen tends to do better in the rural areas. Similar to the Trump pattern. The rural sectors like the conservatives. The cities more cosmopolitan, more educated, more more liberal, tend to like Mr. Macron better. But I think we're seeing a unique set of circumstances right now, in that we're like days away from an eclipse, which can give a reversal of power. So again, I'm not saying that she's actually going to win this one. I'm going to go to the map for right now. But I think there's a better chance of her winning than there was in 2017. So this isn't a bold prediction. I'm not predicting she's going to win. But it's, if anything, fear will keep her out of office. But again, like I said, I think one of the problems we run into is the French electorate really seems, at least from the chart of France, the French electorate really seems like it doesn't care. And that gives Ms. Le Pen an advantage. The polls, I've seen the polls, they're not really what we would call statistically close polls. At least some of them I've seen are statistically close polls. But I think it'll be fascinating to see how much she's improved her election chances this time around, and also how the landscapes of these various countries are changing. And again, if I'd like to encourage you not to freak out if you see a nationalist get elected. A nationalist isn't automatically a Nazi. Okay, so I think that, and I'm not apologizing for nationalists. I'm actually an internationalist myself, but they're not necessarily, if something goes to the right, it doesn't mean the end of civilization as we know it. It means usually that countries are essentially kind of recentering themselves and realigning themselves more towards a place where they can feel secure before they can move forward. So the overall trend in human civilization is really towards more liberal societies. I do get worried that we're letting corporations, this is just personal, that we're letting corporations run more and more of things, that we're letting essentially elite classes, whether they be on the right or on the left, make more and more decisions for us. But that seems to be an historical factor as well. So that's just, and I just want to look at where at the line for France tomorrow. Let me just we're going to go to the report, but I did say there were going to be changes in governments around the world. It doesn't mean it's going to start in France. Okay, so let's see if there's anything. There's nothing really. The closest line to France is Venus, which is actually close to its exaltation sign right now. It's about a week away from its exaltation sign, and there'll be an eclipse on April 30th to May 1st. So I think that essentially, as we look over the next week or so, you'll start to see increasing disruption or increasing changes. I think also in France, you may see a little bit of civic unrest connected with this election. And that's mainly because of the Venus line being over here and Venus being in the same sign with Mars. So let's look at the world chart and let's see if the world chart, hopefully the computer's been working properly. And oh, and I did want to touch on Bitcoin just a little bit and cryptocurrencies just a little bit. Let me just get out of this guy and go over here. And I'm going to change the scale of the chart. Layout examples. Yes, not my name change. Layout examples. Oh, I see why this little guy's open. So let's go here. Let's go to Bitcoin a little bit. I want to make sure I have enough time to do everything I want to cover. So that's why I'm glaring into the camera so often, because that's my timer. Okay, we're in New Bedford. What's the richest city in the world? Let's see now. That was during the time of the whaling industry. I think it was about 2 years. We were in New Bedford was the richest city in the world. It didn't last long. Let's see now. So sun, and I wasn't here then, so I had nothing to do with it. The sun is in Aries right now, along with Rahu, so that does give general dissatisfaction with governments around the world and leaders around the world. Mars and Venus are in, and there is a change, Moon-Saturn conjunction, that it does indicate sort of a change in governmental structure, but again, it may favor Macron because this is Macron's rising sign. And the other thing is Jupiter's in the third house. So we have a Moon Saturn conjunction. So everybody's kind of stuck where they are right now. They're kind of bored or kind of disappointed. Venus, Mars, there is a desire for change, but that particular combination is really fighting for change. Jupiter's in the third house. That'll give some short-term voyages to people, some short-term lessons to be learned. There is a desire for change of power or leadership. That's true around the world. It's not just true in France. The fifth house lord is Venus. The fifth house lord is in the second house. Is overall is fine, good for money. It's good for financial growth. And the seventh house lord. So let's look at other people's money though, and that is the stock market. So we look at the stock market. We want to look at the eighth house. So there's some panic in the stock market that will be really until around May 15th. And I think actually around the end of April, you'll start to see signs of the economy receding significantly, and even housing starting to recede significantly in the United States. 1, 2, 3, 4. Saturn is aspecting Ketu in this chart. So again, although there is a desire for change or for revolt, it'll be delayed or deferred just a little bit until Saturn changes signs next year, early next year, permanently changes signs early next year. And also, let me just see now, K2's in the 10th, so that does give kind of a revolutionary fervor to people. And Mars is lord of the 11th house. So financially, real estate markets will be good for another couple of months. It'll be another couple of months before you start to see a slowdown in that particular area. And that's in the United States, but that's true in the rest of the world too. But this is actually a chart which does indicate some changes coming up over the next few months. So you'll see some people essentially ejected from the seat of government over the next year and a half. But you'll see the most intense activity starting around April 30th to May, and into the summer months, and actually in November or so, because whenever you have two eclipses, you usually have two eclipses 6 months later. So we'll have additional eclipses in November of this year. The other thing is, from the chart, this Sun Rahu conjunction, a lot of government scandals all around the world. I mean, not just in the United States, not just in France, but just in general. If we're looking at things like Bitcoin, which is essentially a kind of a commodity investment, this combination of the Sun and Rahu will make the Bitcoin market exceptionally erratic until around May 15th. One of the good things that's going to happen over this next week is not only the eclipse, but also Saturn changing signs. Saturn will go into Aquarius. That'll open the pathway for reform, and also for and reform is interesting because it's always somewhat problematic. It's always, somebody always loses something in reform. But there will be more of a move towards, we'll have about 2 years of what I would call contraction, and then about another 2 years of loosening of increasing prosperity. So and like I said, this chart, as I said, I think a couple of weeks ago, this chart looks an awful lot like the 60s to me. So does that mean we'll have assassinations? We're certainly in a situation right now where we have a threat of nuclear war. Okay, so that's certainly something that reminds me of the 60s. But basically, I don't think we're going to have it any more than we had in the 60s. And also, at least from this chart, people will be clamoring more for a voice in what happens in their government. We're already seeing signs of that because there's a growing resentment against experts making decisions for us, even though they're well-intentioned and and essentially by and large they're well-meaning. The idea that we're separating people from more and more control over their daily lives isn't going to go over well. And this actually has a lot to do with the larger conversation about globalization. So essentially, there are certain advantages to globalizing the economy. So essentially, you have a more you have more countries at more or less equal levels, but within the countries, there's a wider division or there's a wider separation of income. So essentially, I was just reading a book about the meritocracy, and the meritocracy essentially is, so I'm not claiming that inherited money is a good idea, but if you have a meritocracy, people will be more driven to hold on to what they've gained. They'll be more driven to stay in the upper income levels that they've recently achieved. So essentially, the idea that you're going to have income redistribution in a meritocracy is kind of a pipe dream. It's not going to be given up that easily. So let's look and see. So let me get off that particular rant for now, and let's look at where trouble spots are in the world. But again, we have governmental disruption. We have what I would call, so disruptors are essentially essential for change. So if we want to see things change, you need some kind of disruption. You need some kind of element of and people may say, well, we've had enough of that. We're kind of tired of that. Let's go back. But this is, given the planetary periods, this is part of a larger cycle of change, which again is necessary, but kind of a pain. So let's go out to Hawaii. So we can see some minor governmental scandals in Hawaii. You can see some communication problems in Hawaii as well. Okay, so that Mercury is running through that particular sign. And as a matter of fact, you'll see a lot of governmental scandals or a lot of misreporting in Western Canada and the western part of the United States, especially around Washington and Oregon and Northern California. So this isn't picking on any particular party or any particular group of states. This is just what the chart is showing. Mars is passing through, looks like Arizona and Baja California and just the tip over here of Mexico. So you'll see some fighting or some arguments or some gunplay along this series of states over here, some physical violence over here. Venus is over here in North Dakota, South Dakota, down through Texas, and Venus and down through central Mexico. And Venus will give inflationary pressure along with Jupiter. Jupiter is going to essentially uh, be showing some signs of increasing prominence. So is Louisiana, so is Michigan. I find it interesting that in Michigan, so I was saying there were gonna be some governmental scandals, and these aren't large scale governmental scandals, but the kidnapping of the governor of Michigan was large. You know, the people charged with the conspiracy to kidnap were all released, all found not guilty, and the reason was because I think 12. It was something like 12 out of the 18 conspirators were FBI agents. So it just seemed like it was a little bit loaded. Change in government, change, and some sadness connected with governmental change in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and also around DC. Okay, so this doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's going to die, but there'll be a set of circumstances over here where local governments have a lot of problems and a lot of unhappiness. And again, this intersects out in the Caribbean. It's a little bit too far away to really affect, but there'll be increasing scandals in Washington. That's how I'm interpreting that. The sun goes down through Brazil, so again, scandals in government in Brazil and scandals in media throughout Brazil. Okay, so these are things to watch out for, and also scandals in business. Mars is passing close to the Azores Islands, and we have our friend, looks like Venus and Jupiter passing close to West Africa, so no real problems there. So Mars, again, like I said, Mars close to Cape Verde, close to Azores, some possibility of volcanic activity, although we hope not, or earthquakes. And Iceland through pretty much Ireland and Spain, it looks like there are going to be some findings connected with justice in those countries. And what I mean by that is there'll be some uncovering of facts. But overall, those countries will start to recover pretty well, Spain and Portugal in particular. France, as I said before, Jupiter is coming close to France. Jupiter is not a liberal planet. I just wanted to share that bit of advice for you. It's a traditional planet, okay? It creates opportunities, but it's also going to create them within a traditional setting. So basically, what happens is, this is why I'm saying that you'll see a more conservative voice in both UK, Ireland, France, Spain, and Portugal. Germany, I know, is going through some problems, but those aren't indicated right here from this chart, except that we can see the Sun-Rahu conjunction coming through, except that it's worried about its economy, but that's essentially Europe being surrounded by the Sun and Venus, and the Sun and Jupiter. So essentially the Sun is going to give some scandals in government all the way through Africa. This is going to be a really disruptive time in government through around May. It'll probably continue for the next 6 months. And also from this chart, Saturn is going to Iran. Iran is going to have a kind of a mini depression or a mini problem with communications. So is Saudi Arabia. And if we go up through here, those communications issues are going to stretch all the way through Russia. So Russia is going to feel a little bit constrained or tied down. If we go to China, if we go to India, India is actually in a fairly good place right now. It's having a fourth COVID epidemic, but it looks like that'll be resolved pretty quickly. It's sort of like in a panic mode right now because of this Mercury line over here. And so are Afghanistan and Pakistan, but basically, excuse me. Hello? Okay, for what reason? Hello, for what reason? Uh, no, sorry about that. All right, so this is like real life interfering, and I can't edit that out right now. But basically, as we go over to India and all the way through China, um, there's some expansion of the economy actually starting to come together. Um, but India will be expanding a lot more quickly than China will be, and overall, China looks like it's still kind of stuck in place. And there is dissatisfaction with the governments growing in China and the Philippines, um, Borneo, and Australia. And finally, as we go towards Japan, there's a moon line running through Japan. So Japan is going to feel a little bit constricted or a little bit tied together over the next few months. And um, so is Australia, to be honest with you. There's going to be a little bit of a panic or a news um, scandal in Australia. And again, as we move towards New Zealand over here, towards the far right, there's a Jupiter-Venus combination, so they're due for some inflationary pressure. So wherever you see the Jupiter-Venus lines, there's inflationary pressure. That's true in the middle of the United States, right in the heartland. It's true in England, France, and West Africa. Pretty much anywhere on the map. Is true in India. It's true in India and Russia. And so again, we are going to experience a little bit of a collapse, a little bit of an economic collapse is too strong a word, an economic downturn in certain countries around the world. Okay, so that's just to prepare you for that. But it won't be, I don't think it'll be that severe. All right, so let's go back to the regular chart and see if I can tell you what's happening for you in the following week. Okay, so as we see, we have, gotta have to pace this out. We have Sun in Aries right now. It'll be there until May 16th, according to or May 15th, according to the Vedic horoscope. And it's with Rahu. So that again gives a little bit of panic about government. That may be what we're seeing in France as well, because there's panic about a possible victory from Marie Le Pen. There may be nothing for them to worry about. You know, Macron may stay in office, and they'll be able to go along pleasantly along their way. But there are problems in France. I mean, there are problems all throughout Europe. Gas prices are astronomically high in Europe. So again, if we think we have it bad here, then Germany and France and England are experiencing really high rates of inflation, and so is Japan. Most of the world is. So England has North Sea oil, but that's not really, it's so they're a little bit sheltered from that, but that doesn't mean they hit by other factors in the supply chain. So for Aries, for those of you who have Sun in Aries, it's April 15th to May 16th. So remember, that's always that push ahead with the Indian horoscope. Career life is strong. Relationship life seems dull or boring, and overall, and there will be some fights in relationships, but they'll tend to calm down quite a bit around May 1st. For those who are Taurus, again, relationship life seems actually kind of sweet, kind of nice right now. Be a lot of passion. Work life is hard though, and most people will be focused on their career and their financial gains and trying to avoid loss and achieve what they want to gain. Okay, let me see if I can get this block out of here. For a Gemini, Gemini has will have financial gains, short-lived with financial gains, and those will improve within about 15 days. And career life is very good for Gemini. It will be very good over the next year for Gemini. Ninth house, very good for romantic luck. Saturn and Moon are in the eighth house. It'll be a little bit difficult for this sign's relationship partners, though, financially. K2's in the fifth house. Some unexpected surprises romantically and also with children. So pleasant surprises. Cancer has a lot of focus on relationship, wanting to change relationship. That'll sort of come to fruition towards the end of this week. It's not going to be true for every single Cancer out there, but for a lot of them, there'll be significant change in relationship. And for Leo, you have and career life will seem to be a little bit frustrating for Cancers. My apologies for leaving that out, but luck will improve over the next few months for this particular sign. Also, some unexpected legacies or so many unexpected financial growth. For Leos, Leos have a lot of interest in the opposite gender or however they're inclined. And there'll be a lot of interest in meeting people and greeting people and getting together with them. And Saturn and Moon are in the sixth house, so they'll feel like they have a lot of enemies. Jupiter's in the eighth house, they'll have unexpected gains financially. And Sun's in the ninth house. So again, short-term enhanced reputation and enhanced luck they wish they can turn into long-term. For Virgo has Jupiter in the seventh house. That'll increase relationship opportunities for this sign over the next year. And as a matter of fact, that'll get even stronger after May 1st. And there'll be unexpected changes in what they can, in relationship partners' income, some enhancements, some growth, but maybe a little bit too overly optimistic. Saturn's in the fifth house, aspecting the seventh. So even though there will be relationship opportunities, they won't have a break or be able to take advantage of them for a little while. And finally, let's go to Libra. Libra has Sun in the seventh house, so a lot of their attention is on relationship life and why they're unhappy with it, and also feeling dissatisfied or underappreciated in relationships, but also uncertain about what they want to do. A lot of focus on home, a lot of focus on keeping or stabilizing what they have, as opposed to destroying it. Some love affairs are possible for Libras, although not really long-term relationships. Not for a couple of months. And at least from this sign, Jupiter's in the sixth house, so they'll be opposed by conventional thinkers. Mars rules Scorpio. Scorpio's Lord is in the fourth house, so there's a lot of focus on home activity again. Changes in location, short trips for people who don't want to take. But luck will be good. Financial luck in particular will be good. Sun and Rahu, they'll be a little bit worried about their health. And overall career life looks okay for this particular sign, although it will be very hard work. For Sagittarius, Saturn and Moon are in the second house, so that gives some money coming in, but it's very slow. It's like you're eking out a living. Mars and Venus are in the third house, so there'll be some trips for pleasure. Jupiter's in the fourth house, good for educational enhancement. Sun's in the fifth house, good for increasing romantic involvements with spectacularly good-looking people. And career-wise, they seem to be okay, but they're a little bit concerned or upset about career. And that'll shift within about 2 weeks' time. For Capricorn, Capricorn has Saturn and Moon in the first house. This is a good placement because it essentially allows the sign to dominate in relationship matters and pretty much get their own way. Venus and Saturn are in the second house. I think from this combination, it's going to give some, it'll make the sign seem much more attractive than it normally does. And it doesn't mean Capricorn's unattractive, it just means they'll be considered more attractive than usual. Jupiter's in the third house, very easy for them to get their own way. And Sun and Rahu are in the fourth house. A lot of dissatisfaction with home, desire for adventure, desire to do something different. And K2's in the 10th house. Again, that feeling of not being recognized career-wise is very strong for this combination. Venus and Mars are in the first house for Aquarius. A lot of desire for relationship, for career recognition, a lot strong desire for relationship. Venus-Mars conjunction make people really interested in kissing and making love, those kinds of things. And it also makes the sign very passionate about what it values. It may not even be romance. It may be something like music or politics or art or crocheting, whatever you're interested in, you get very passionate about it. Jupiter's in the second house, and that'll give this sign more money. Sun's in the third house. It'll make it more courageous than normal. K2's in the ninth house will give it problems or difficulties with bosses. But overall career life will tend to be much better for the sign. Finally, last but not least, we have, and it looks like I have enough time, Jupiter's in the first house for Pisces rising. That indicates transformation for the sign and new opportunities for the sign. Sun is in the second house. They'll seem to be a little bit greedy or a little bit overreaching at times for the sign. And finally, over here, career-wise, it looks like this sign is going to be focused on all this action in the world career-wise, and also slow but steady gains, and also rich relationship life from Venus and Mars in the 12th house. So that's it for this week. Hopefully everything worked out and I don't have to redo any of this. I apologize for the phone interruption, but those things happen. And as I said, when I get to a more secure place, I'll be able to get rid of those. If you like the broadcast, please subscribe, tell your friends, please share with your friends. And that's it for this week. Namaste. You can do anything you put your mind to. I believe in you. I love you. God bless. Namaste. Bye all.